Well, good morning, everybody. We're here at the offices of Professional Peak Protection in Essex, and this is part of their ongoing support for PFP member companies to improve the knowledge that you've got around your practice and help you increase your performance. My name is Neville Gaunt, and you will have seen today that in the invitation to the webinar that my colleague Graham Williams is also with me. There's a short summary of our experiences, but just to let you know that I'm also Chairman of North Kent Federation of Small Businesses, so I know how tough it is out there for everybody. I hear it on a regular basis. I'm also Chairman of Swanley Chamber, so I hear it from two sides. So hopefully here today we're going to be giving you a fairly short insight into what we call mind fitness, where small changes will have a very large impact on the way you improve your business and improve your own personal performance. I will be introducing Graham Williams shortly, because he's developed this process over 12 years, working with Olympians. For some of you that can remember, David Henry, Sir John Whitmore, from the sporting arenas have been part of this process several years ago, and Graham has developed this and got some astonishing results in all sectors because it's a personal development process rather than just focused on business. But first let's look about what this is all about really, and it's all about growth and ultimately sales, your chargeable time within the practice. So if we just click on to the first slide, who do you actually sell to? Now perhaps you can conjure up an idea of a client you have or a potential client you've been searching for some time, but let me introduce you to the psychological approach to where we are, and believe it or not, this is the person that you're actually selling to initially. And as Graham will shortly let you know the reasons why, you're going to find out how to get the person out of that fast arena where they make a very quick decision into the thinking part of the brain where you can actually get them to be buying what you're on offer. So without further ado, as they say, you can take people out of the Stone Age, but you can't take the Stone Age out of people. I now introduce Graham Williams.
Yeah, good morning everybody. You'll see that Neville and myself call ourselves performance specialists, and there's a very good reason for that. Our whole process is about improving mind fitness to improve performance. Now, who do you sell to? As you can see, we've got this Stone Age person in front of us. When I did the research onto what actually causes blockers to performance, blockers to selling, blockers to leadership, it was very apparent that we are actually very complex beings. Now we all know the fact that every one of us is different. What makes that difference? Why do some people do very well with relationships, doing very well as leaders, do very well as in sales? There are people who can actually charge a majority of their time out to clients and others can't. Yet the reality is, in your world, I would suspect most of you have gone through the very same development, training, knowledge input. But the results are all different. So what makes a difference? Well, when we set out to have a look at this, it was very important to understand that what we say to people has to be scientifically sound. If it's not, it's just a bit of mumbo jumbo. So what I'm about to share with you is scientifically sound. Secondly, when we apply it to the world of work, we make sure it's very business focused. It's about results. It also has to be practical. It has to manifest itself in such a way that people want to change their mindset, change their attitude, change their behaviours. And it has to deliver tangible results which are sustainable. That's really, really important. So it was quite a journey when I started off 12 years ago, and we looked at one of the things, what's actually going on. Here's some facts around performance. Let me just describe performance at the moment. There are many, many descriptions of performance, but I think the one I favour, and as an organisation we favour, is the one I picked up from the Olympic athletes. They see performance as what you do at any moment in time. Now let's imagine you're a 100-metre runner. When I ask groups of people, what do you think going through the mindset of that runner as they are about to start the race? Most people will say winning. While having spoken to several of these Olympians, it's not. They focus on where they put their hands on the track, how they put their feet in the blocks, how they balance their body. They're listening to the B of the bang. They focus on the power they need to come out of those blocks at the right angle, to get the right length of stride, to get the feet down on the right way. And they gradually put all the little things in place. And if they get it right, they might beat their own target. And if it's right on the day, they could win. Winning is actually outside their control, because on the track there are 7 other competitors. So performance for us is the input. If you get the inputs right, then the output happens. And it's focusing on the small bits of input which lead to a big change in the results. But let's look at some of the reality, the facts. Some work by a company whose specialism is in the IT world said that in their world, people are actually spending 3.1 hours a day on their job. Now, what that means is, if you've got somebody on 30k a year, you work out what that is an hour. But when they're actually only working 3.1 hours a day, you take off holidays, etc., the actual cost is nearly £90 an hour per person. So the average person in the IT world is working less than 50% of their day focused on what they should be doing. You apply that to getting chargeable time on people, and you're at a disadvantage if that's all you're doing. Now what that means is you may be busy for the full 8, 9 hours a day, whatever you work, but that time may not be focused on what it should be focused on. Another problem the UK faces is absenteeism, sickness, and you can see how much that costs the UK economy a year. In fact, some of the time that people are away from work is averaged out at 7.7 days. However, there are many, many organisations where that time can be up to as much as 15 days a year. Huge loss, huge cost. Conflict within organisations, hugely expensive and often attributed to poor relationships. Now, a lot of people just dismiss this as being a personality clash. We don't. Personalities don't clash, attitudes do. And those attitudes cause managers to have so much time wasted in trying to resolve it. Not very productive. Disengagement, very, very expensive. And what's surprising is that in the UK, a lot of research suggests that up to 80% of people are disengaged. That disengagement can either be in a passive form, where people function but they're not really proactive, or sometimes it can be in a very active form of disengagement, where people will actually cause problems, part of the reason for conflict. But it all boils down to poor performance. People are not performing as they are actually capable of performing. Time is wasted, conflict is rife, and underperformance is prevalent. And what does that cost your business? How much time do people spend doing things, but not the things that are needed to really improve the profitability of a company? To help solve those programs, we've had training. Training in the technical skills, and you guys and girls will know about what's needed to be a good accountant and to keep your status up annually, what you have to do. No problem with that. The problem comes when it relates to relationships, when it relates to performance, leadership, management, change, whole raft of things. What is often known as the softer skills. The results for the softer skills is actually very poor. It's not very transferable. Now, what does that mean in real terms? Well, if you've got people who are disengaged, there's conflict and sickness and people aren't working the hours they should be working, it actually reduces performance by between 31 and 51%. But if you've got somebody with a can-do mindset, that will give a difference of about 12 to 18% more productivity. So what would an extra 12% mean to your business if you could charge out an extra 12% of time? I suspect it would make a huge difference. So these are the issues which we challenge. Those issues are often caused by people not being very mindful. And part of what we did, we looked at what goes on in the traditional way to tackle those issues. Well, your business, whether you're a client or whether you're working with your clients, there will be a business strategy. That strategy should lead to increased productivity and the results that you desire. And often people need some input. So the traditional route is to give them knowledge so that they learn. It's an educated process, give people knowledge and hope that knowledge is transferred back to improve performance. Unfortunately, the evidence of that is very weak. If anyone's into training out there, I'm not knocking training, but training in areas of leadership, etc., in the way it has been done traditionally, has had a poor transfer rate from that input to the results that clients deserve. Research shows there's no real link between knowledge and action. We set out to challenge that and to change it. And that difference is to develop mind fitness. I'll explain what mind fitness is in a moment. But instead of using knowledge-based learning, that educated route, we use action-based learning. It's something that's very natural. Now, natural learning happens automatically. You learn by doing, you learn by copying, you learn by imagining. You don't learn with knowledge. How many of you can tie a shoelace? I suspect most of you can. If you were to try and describe to me how to tie a shoelace, you would probably find it quite difficult. Because natural learning is not knowing how to do something, it's actually doing it. Knowing how to be a leader and different types of leadership styles is one thing. Being a leader and doing leadership is a totally different ballgame. Now, ours is very much linked to performance. That's what we call a self-performance specialist. We make sure that people are mind fit to perform, that what we do is get them to take action, and that action is linked to two things. One is changing their mindset, their attitudes, their behaviors, and the second one is linked to performance and productivity. Let me just ask you out there, how many of you have time problems in a day? And how many of you been on time management programs? When I asked this in groups where I could see the results, I've had sort of 80–90% of the people say they have a time management problem, and they've all been on time management programs, but they've still got the time management problems. The difference is time is actually not the problem, it's what goes on inside our heads. We are actually focused on distractors or that sort of thing. Now, one of the reasons for this is it's our belief system. If you look at this checkerboard now, you'll see two squares, one with an A on and one with a B on. The A and the B squares are the same shade. Now, when you look at that, your brain is probably telling you, no, it's not. They are different. I can assure you they are the same. One of the problems we have is that people do not believe the information they've got. And just by covering up the checkerboard and just exposing the two squares, those two squares are the same shade. This particular activity, if you look up Edward, its name on the bottom, and look it up on the web, you can see this experiment, and you will see it's a very sophisticated light experiment. Our beliefs are very much logged into that Stone Age person. Beliefs are formed just by accepting something or not accepting something. There's no thinking that goes with one beliefs. They just occur. Somebody we respect goes, you believe it. Something you read in a newspaper, you believe it. We don't think. And that belief is logged into our Stone Age brain. Snag is, many of these beliefs lead to a can't do or won't do attitude. We make our minds up. There is no thinking, it's just fixed. And as a consequence, any behaviours are based on avoidance. If you ask somebody to do something and they believe actually they're not capable of doing that, they do everything to avoid it. They won't really think about what they're doing. They're just doing. So that rigid mindset occurs. It occurs more than we imagine. And it actually paralyzes performance. If you believe that you're not very good at managing relationships, you will do everything you can to avoid it. If you believe you're actually you're not very good at selling, you probably won't pick the phone up. You probably won't try and sell something. You'll avoid it. You'll get somebody else to do it for you. Very, very powerful, our beliefs are. And most people are not aware of them. Most people just assume that that's the norm. But if you go down a route, well, I can do something, I am capable of it, then we open up our thinking self. We think flexibly, we think appropriately, and we focus on what's important. And we develop a group of activities that enable us to have a growth mindset rather than that rigid mindset. And this is where you get improved performance and increased productivity. Now, as I said, 80% of people are on that can't do or won't do side in the UK. Massive research every year reinforces those things. People come to work, they're very passive or they're very assertive, but they're not very productive. And all you need to do is something very small to become very aware of your belief system. Very aware that actually it's not very productive. We do need to make the phone calls, but you do need to focus on the small inputs, because that's the way you learn how to get the improvement in performance. It's quite simple. If you believe you can do something, you will. If you believe you can't, you won't. Now, working with people, we know that we need to raise their awareness in what they've done. So we call this a global strength. Most people's awareness of how they personally operate is not as good as any of us think it is. We're very aware of other people. We can very quickly judge other people, make our minds up about what other people are like. When it comes to ourselves, not too good. Increasing our awareness of how we operate when we connect with other people is really important. Secondly, once you've raised your awareness, it gives you more control, more choice over what you do. This is quite important because if you make your mind up that you can't do something, then your choice is very limited. If you start to realize you are capable of more things than you think you are, then it gives you more choice. The ability to focus on something, really focus on the input, is what makes the best salespeople, the best leaders, the best problem solvers, the best relationship builders. The ability to focus on the small inputs will actually really improve performance. And of course, if you're going to keep improving, you need feedback. You need to get that feedback, reflect on it. What does that mean? What did I do? When I asked that question, what impact did it have? When I tried to close that deal, what happened? So it's really important that you get feedback. How many of you ask feedback from your clients? At the time, trying to deliver a service, did what we suggest work for you? Get that feedback, really important.
Just before Graham goes on to the next slide, we've had several questions in that the relevance to what we're going through and the relevance to your clients. Jonathan from Southend is the first one of many, and the answer is yes, it relates straight back into your client's business as well, because this is a general strength for everybody, not just for your particular practice, but it can actually improve your client's business. And obviously, the more profitable they are, then the more opportunity they've got coming back to you for more.
Thank you, Neville. Right, so let's look at mind fitness and relate it back to that Stone Age person. When we did our research, we, instead of just using the educative part of the brain, the cognitive part, we knew we needed to actually develop the whole brain. And of course, you'll see in that very simple diagram, the emotional brain. Well, whatever we do, all of us, whether we think it affects us or not, our emotions, our feelings are very important. The feeling part of the brain kicks in really, really early on everything that happens. Everything we do has an emotional state to it. And the old brain is that Stone Age brain. Now this is obviously an oversimplification, but the old brain. Now, in there is where we keep our beliefs, our expectations, our stereotyping, our attitudes. It's also partly linked to our values, and values are linked to other people, because how we relate to people is often value driven. The new brain is the thinking brain, and the new brain enables us to handle a whole lot of complex information, to acquire detail, to analyze, to solve problems, to put it into some form of structure to recreate plans. It also has another aspect of our imagination, our creativity, how to seek synergy between things. Mind fitness, as it says there, and I will say, it's a learned ability to operate effectively across all parts of the mind so that a person is able to perform to their optimum. And to do that, they need to be aware, in control, focused. And we set out to actually mimic that by developing a process which actually incorporates the whole brain. And let's take the beliefs I mentioned. Beliefs sit very much in the whole brain, in the deep part. Beliefs are often formed at an unconscious or subconscious level. Now, if you believe you can't do something, and you change that from a can't to a can, what impact will that have on how you feel? On your ability to think flexibly and appropriately? Your ability to relate better to other people, the social part? What impact will that have on your clients, on your staff, on how you sell? So it's really important that we mimic the whole brain. Now, let's go back, just a reminder. When it comes to selling, I've got this slide in again for a very important reason. Neuroscience tells us today that when we try and sell, that we actually talk to a Stone Age person, and that person will make their mind up in a nanosecond. The old brain is 7 times faster than the modern thinking brain. It's why we make instant decisions, whether they're right or wrong. We can make decisions very fast, and it's a Stone Age person that makes them. And 95% of our decisions, so neuroscience tells us, are made in the Stone Age brain. If you're trying to sell to that Stone Age brain, who's already made their mind up, you're actually going to find it a real struggle. Key message is stop selling. Get the person to start thinking. If you can engage the modern brain, then you will not have to sell, they will buy. And let me just ask you something. When you go out with your family, perhaps if you do on a Saturday, to go shopping, do you go out to be sold to, or do you go out to buy? That's a really important message. Because if you go out to buy, whatever it is you're looking for, you've probably these days done some homework. You probably researched what you want on the web. So whoever's going to be selling to you, if they're good, what they should be doing is trying to match what you have already discovered that you need with what they have got as a product. Now this is a completely different way of doing it. If you get that right, instead of having to face the difficulties over dealing with objections, the person will have already done that if you make sure that you link into the thinking brain. And you do that by asking questions. It's not difficult, it just requires practice. And if that practice, you focus that practice in different aspects of good quality questions, really identifying the need, then you get better at it. Let's return to our map. Now, Mind Fitness, as you see, is on a vertical dimension. We use focused natural learning. And focused natural learning is you have to do it. It provides the know-how to do something. You know how to tie shoelaces. You know how to ask open questions. Very, very powerful. Where the other side is the knowledge side, which you obviously need in accountancy. You need to know how to comply with the various rules and regulations. If you put the two together, you develop that confidence, that resilience, that drive, that determination, that proactivity that leads to personal power. Personal power is something which is inside you. It's not given to you by knowledge. It comes from inside you. Now, what happens between the two dimensions of mind fit and knowledge fit is where it becomes really interesting. And this map, we call it a personal profile map, shows you very clearly that there are the 3 states I mentioned, can't do, won't do, and can do, are as a result of a state of if you're helpless, you have a sense of being out of control. You will really avoid picking that phone up. You will really avoid going to the network meetings. You will really avoid things. You will comply with what you have to. I'm not talking about the compliance of finance, but you do the minimum. This is where real underperformance sits. That can't do stay. Conversely, if you have a real won't do attitude, you'll do what you need to, and that's knowledge based. You can be very dominant, very defensive. You'll over control your territory. Both of those are very rigid, restrictive. A lot of people will move between the two. They can't do or they won't do. Now this map of ours, it's what we call a construct. It's not a theory. It's constructed of a lot of theories to make common sense. We wanted to pick out the gems from, there was over 100 theories when we did the research. So to discover how do you develop people with a can-do? What makes that can-do? What gives that confidence? And it actually comes from the two I mentioned. Being mindfit, those people who can think flexibly and appropriately. It becomes mindfit, those people who have that deep drivers, that can-do beliefs, realistic expectations. The mind fitness of feelings, the ability to be able to control your emotions, to be resilient, to bounce back quickly, and know how to do it, and also how to connect socially with people, whether it's in networks, whether it's in a business meeting or whatever. And we realized that all we have to do is help people discover what small change that they need to make to shift them from a can't and won't to a can in one of those four cells, to develop that can-do mindset, that flexible thinking, that growth in performance, by helping them be in control, can make a huge difference to your business, to the people you work with in your organization, and to your client's business. So what are some of those attitudes and behaviors around can't do, won't do? Now our map, which I said is a construct, developed, identified some very clear differences into the three states. Let me just, as you look at those words around those different states, explain a bit more about what a construct is. I'll use something which we're all very familiar with. I'll use a physical construct, which is the weather. Now the weather is a construct. In itself, the weather is not something you can actually measure. It's constructed of bits which you can measure. You measure temperature. You measure wind speed. You measure humidity. You measure air pressure, and other things. And what the professionals do is they take the data from each of these parts, the science if you like, and they construct the weather forecast. And we're all familiar with that, and we all have an understanding of what that means to us. This is exactly the same. It's like the weather, where you get a small change has a big impact, so a change in 1 degree of temperature will actually affect all elements of the weather. It's exactly the same here. If you get people feeling hopeless, insecure, apathetic, if you can help them identify one small thing they need to change so that it links in with more control, then they start to move up the continuum towards powerfulness. If you can get somebody who's very cynical, difficult, and sometimes aggressive to realize that that behavior is counterproductive to performance, and all they've got to do is make a tweak in one small area, you're going to get people will move up the continuum. Now, can you see in your clients any of these characteristics? There are many more, of course. What about yourself? Are there any of the characteristics you recognise in yourself on that map? What impact does your characteristics have on your ability to sell, on your ability to improve relationships, on ability to manage your staff? What do you believe about other people? What do you believe about yourself? Now, one of the things around this map is that a lot of people believe they're not as good as other people. Let me just say something to you about beliefs. There are a lot of companies out there who offer talent identification, talent management, as if there are some people who come into this world with very special talents. They don't. There might be a slight variation, genetic variations, biological variation, but most of the talents that we acquire are based on natural learning. There's a lot of evidence for this. Some of you may struggle with that when we're saying that. But the evidence is that if anybody gets good at something, it's because they have practiced, they have persevered. When it's gone wrong, they've demonstrated resilience and they've gone back and done more. They've focused on small bits, which develops talents. Unfortunately, most of us don't use our natural talents. I'll give you a physical one, which all of us have got, but not many of us use. Anatomically, our makeup is such that we are designed, the muscle structure confirms this, we are designed to be long-distance runners. We have evolved. A Stone Age person into modern person is a natural long-distance runner. How many of us run that long distances? So it's a talent we've got, we just don't use. How many of us use their talent to be creative, to be innovative? How many of us use that talent to handle lots of information and make sense of it in a very effective way? How many of us use our talent to communicate with other people in a very effective way? That's where selling comes in. Well, how many people believe that we've got none of those? Really important. So getting mind fit can have a huge impact on our performance, our productivity, and our profit. So remember, 4 global strengths: awareness, being in control, focused on what's important, and by that I mean stop focusing on the distractors. Those distractors, what reduces the hours worked each day to 3.1% or less. And get feedback on what you do. Identify a small change that you need, because a small change can have a big impact. If you suddenly believe that you can do X or Y or Z and practice it and focus on that, you'll find it makes a huge difference across your whole being, the whole mind. Just make sure it's linked to performance. And of course, being mind fit is so important. There are so many people who are mind unfit and avoid doing things. Get that can-do mindset. You can do all sorts of things. If you can drive a car, you can juggle. But how many people believe they can? Remember, the way you actually develop mind fitness is just do it. You might want to copy somebody. You might want to imagine success. Now I say imagine because I can assure you the very best athletes imagine performing, imagine getting things right. And the brain will do it for you. As neuroscience tells us, if you imagine something and do it, you actually create strong neural pathways. Really good habit. If you link the mind fit with actually developing themselves fit, that's when you build personal power. Remember, personal power gives you the confidence, gives you the resilience, it gives you the drive to perform. And that's what personal power is all about, the power that drives performance. So when it comes to selling, when it comes to developing relationships, you need to get your head in the right place. Now for selling, the message is quite simple. Stop selling. Stop selling to the Stone Age person. Start to help people discover what they want to buy and make sure your products meet what they want, because they will have done the work first. So encourage them to buy from you. And part of that journey is to build relationships. It is to make a difference to the client. If you apply this to your business, Mind Fitness, and if you can get an extra hour a day from yourself, from your staff, of focus time, what difference will that make? If you can stop doing things that actually are not really performance focused, yeah, there are some things you have to do because the legislation tells us we've got to do it. But there are a lot of things that we don't do, we should do. If you get yourself mind fit, then your business is going to improve. You're going to be able to increase your chargeable time.
If I could just interject there, because we've had lots of questions that have come through on two specific topics. The first one is, I'll wrap it up as, is there any government support out there for this? And the answer is, to particularly Simon of Brighton and Claire of Preston, who seem to be quite hot on this subject. Yes, there is government grants, believe it or not. There are leadership grants available, and we qualify. We can get you qualified to do that, but that means the question came from Claire was, can we get it for the client? And the answer is yes, you can get it for the client. You've got to be over 2 employed and under 250 and want to grow. So that's the sort of business that we all want to be working with, obviously. And Alex from Bristol, again, there are several others in the same frame. Can we put seminars on for clients? Yes, we're absolutely delighted to put seminars on for clients. We can follow that up after this particular event. And I need to advise you now that the video will be online as part of PFP's ongoing training courses for you. And they'll obviously be following the link, sending you a link as soon as this video session is finished.
So this is a different approach. Traditionally, people are trying to get their businesses fit, and obviously, if your business is fit, you've got everything in place, then there's not a problem. You have to make sure that you've got the relevant knowledge to run your business. But the one thing that has been missing is getting people's minds in the right place to perform. When you put the three together, business fit, knowledge fit, mind fit, you're going to build a successful business and you're going to develop successful people. So, Mind Fitness is our particular business. Can we link it to your business? Do you need to link it to your business? Only you can answer that. So, have we got any more questions then?
No, I think we've probably done on the question side. So, thank you all for listening in. We hope it's been useful to you. We're available on that, on the links. We've got our LinkedIn profiles on the website, so you can actually see where we're coming from. For those of you who are really interested, there's a MindFit group on LinkedIn, and we look forward to working with you in the future. Thank you again.